Welcome back to the Squad Show. Luke Inman at Luke_Spinman. If that was his last game, what a way to ride into the sunset for the Hammer, CJ Ham.
I'm Luke Braun. I do Locked On Vikings. Another 5-game win streak for the Minnesota Vikings. We're number one.
And I'm Sam Ekstrom. What a way to ride into the sunset for Harrison Smith.
And I'm Ron Johnson. CJ Ham has the same amount of touchdowns as Justin Jefferson. Who would imagine that?
Skol! It's the Viking Squad. Everything Minnesota Vikings every week. Breaking down all the big hits and game-changing plays from the land of 10,000 lakes. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. It's time to gear up. The Viking Squad Show starts now.
What's going on? Back in the lab, back at it. Another Viking Squad Show. We got 60 minutes of instant reaction deep dive coming up next, including the Vikings ending the year on this 5-game winning streak after they beat the Packers today, 16-3, plus biggest takeaways on J.J. McCarthy and Max Brosmer's day as well. But before we get into all the action, quick reminder, today's episode brought to us by Prize Picks. Prize Picks, download the Prize Picks app. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL. You're getting $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Also, quick reminder, after this episode, go check out that guy right there, Luke Braun, over on Locked On Vikings, pumping out all the daily content each and every day. Ron, batting leadoff per usual, one last time here this season. Vikings end the season winners of 5 straight. Kind of felt like a weird, I don't want to say meaningless game on paper, almost preseason-esque in some ways. A lot of backups out there. I think the A topic for a lot of us was, could J.J. McCarthy end the year on a high note in game 10, or I should say start 10 of his young career? Do you feel like he checked any more boxes today before he got hurt in the second half? And I guess what else kind of big picture really stuck out to you the most as you watch this one kind of unfold the way it did?
Yeah, the first box that he checked off, what he still hasn't learned, is get out of bounds. I don't understand why he didn't just run out of bounds. Like that meaningless run over of a defensive back who probably is pulling up a little bit anyway because he doesn't want to get a flag for hitting the quarterback late. Like it's just the youthfulness, which you can almost call kind of ignorance of just get out of bounds. Slide or get out of bounds. Like that hit made no sense. You know, you could hurt your shoulder. You could, get another concussion. Who knows what happened? That was one box that got checked off. Like still needs to learn that. The other one was he has a strong arm though. I mean, the throw when he was rolling out to his right and he hit, I think, Sims on the over route against the sideline and just kind of drove it in there. Like you saw the arm talent. The other one, and again, another negative box to check off, is that he still hasn't figured out timing on double moves. Jordan Addison absolutely killed his DB on a double move, and JJ just kind of threw it way too hard threw it to the right spot, but threw it way too hard. So, the things that everybody's talking about are the things that Justin Jefferson said, he has to fix. I'm guessing some of those are it, like when to throw the fastball, when not to throw it, how to throw it. Overall, though, the Vikings got the win. I think they were supposed to win that game because the Packers were not trying to win. I mean, if you watch the Packers warm-ups pregame, it felt definitely like a preseason game. Seeing even Trayvon Diggs wearing number 28 out there was weird. It was just a lot of weirdness going on. And overall, like Max Brosmer and J.J. McCarthy kind of played okay. But that game plan today to get Justin Jefferson the ball, they could have literally done that all season. I don't understand where that play calling was all season and why it had to be so tricky. Like, I feel like that is a formula to win. And then the run game, obviously was there with a very low-level backup, offensive line.
Yeah, did it feel like, Sam, kind of big picture this season for J.J. McCarthy, almost an incomplete grade, was just kind of almost amplified in this game as well, that it's just like started out hot, 5 for 5, cooled down a little bit, and then he gets hurt. And we just don't have that big sample size yet again as we end the year.
Right, a lot of starts and stops. 10 starts, 2 games he couldn't finish, 2 other games he got hurt in that cost him time, 3 different injuries, aggravated the hand multiple times this year. So I think we learned that part of his resume, one of the red flags, it's going to be injury proneness, whatever you want to call it. Is his body going to be able to hold up? Is he going to be able to protect himself? That's a big question coming out of this season. That is certainly connected to his performance, inability to be on the field in games, inability to be on the field during practice weeks, that played in to his performance. And that's all part of this equation. Certainly reason to believe that if he's given another chance next year, things could be better. His health could be better. If he played 17 games, we'd probably see better things. If he had better health up front and around him and a complete offensive line, reasons to believe that next year can be good. A good December, certainly flashes to build on. But on the whole, right, too many injuries, too many overthrows, too many sacks taken. Fortunately, I think he ends the year with a little bit of momentum, some upward trajectory, 6-4 record, even though like within that 6-4, there's a lot of ugliness, that there's still probably an intangible confidence building element to say, at least he's winning. At least there's right. He won some big games. He won in Detroit. He won in Chicago. Like there are some legit wins in there, something to build on in a 10-game sample, not though what we hoped entering the season.
One thing that we kind of we barely got out here, attention we maybe missed, was that McCarthy played just well enough, and with Cam Ward leaving the game soon with his shoulder injury, that J.J. McCarthy is only 33rd of 34 quarterbacks in EPA per dropback this year.
Huge.
Like
Huge.
The way the season ended there is encouraging stuff, but we probably shouldn't mischaracterize it. When he played poorly way more often than not. It was a bad year. 10 games is enough to say it's a bad year, right? 2 games is like whatever, but 10 games, that's enough to say, nah, this dude was like pretty stinky for a lot of it. And I think we saw in this game like what happened a lot this year, which was McCarthy tilted. He got that taunting penalty. He thought he shouldn't have. He was all fired up. And the next 2 drives were absolutely hideously bad. And then he calmed down and it got better and he figured it out. But that happened a lot this year where the game, for whatever reason, got him into overthink mode, got him too hyped up, and he would start sailing passes, throwing too hard, trying to do too much. I think there's a maturity that will come, that some of that will like calm down. But like, it was bad. How you want to project next year is a separate question from that this feeds into. But I want to just not fall into the trap of being like, talking about him as an injury-prone quarterback and not and also a bad quarterback. And the injury proneness is honestly his own fault too. He doesn't protect himself, doesn't get out of bounds, didn't slide when he was supposed to, putting his hands in harm's way, throwing, working his, like into the pocket, working his way up right onto the rear end of his guard, and then his hand hits the helmet. Like that's his fault. So there's like the list of things to fix is really, really long. I don't think that means don't try, but like you got to fix his footwork. You got to fix how he plays in the pocket. You got to make him protect himself. You got to make him stop throwing bullet passes. You got to fix the timing of his. You have to fix like 9 things. You can't do that all in one offseason. So this is going to be a long, long, long project if the Vikings have the patience for it.
Yeah,
it sounds like a documentary, Luke. 9 for 9.
9 for 9.
Yeah, 9 for 9. Here's the list of 9 things you suck at.
Trademark that right now. Ron, just to that point here, again, we got weeks, we got months to speculate, long off season, but knowing this was kind of the last impression we're going to have on this 2025 campaign for JJ McCarthy, what is your gut kind of knee-jerk reaction going into the offseason for the quarterback plans for the Vikings? Again, don't want to veer too far off from this game specifically, but just knowing that this is the way, kind of another incomplete grade that we ended the year. How do we take that and go into the offseason when we think about how the Vikings need to address this quarterback room?
Well, you got to look at what do you want the room to look like? Like, do you want it to look like J.J. McCarthy, meaning you have to find a veteran that you think could start but fits the same, look of J.J. McCarthy? Because you can't go out and go get like Ben Roethlisberger type when you have J.J. McCarthy, who's a runner, who's mobile, who you want to get out the pocket. So it's kind of figuring that out first. Like, is this going to be a true competition where you're going to go out and find the best quarterback to come in and compete? Or is this still kind of like, well, J.J. McCarthy's job, but let's get somebody in here to push him that maybe, ends up being the backup. Maybe if he gets hurt, he can start. You look at like Malik Willis, Marcus Mariota. There's a lot of names out there that they could consider. And then there's also just, run it back with Max Brosmer, him, and then another older guy to bring it in. I don't think you go get Aaron Rodgers because Aaron Rodgers doesn't want to be a backup. He doesn't want to be a babysitter. He doesn't want to be a hand holder of a young quarterback. He's already stated that. That's where I think it lies. But honestly, I mean, after seeing some of the throws, like watching them live, watching them move around the pocket, watching them do, I feel like it's fixable. I just feel like Kevin O'Connell has to decide, is his offense more important than the development of his quarterback? If the development of his quarterback is more important, he's going to remove some of that brain work at pre-snap, which, like Luke said, when he gets juiced up, now his brain is moving too fast and he's having to think too much. He's having to kill plays, can plays, renumber the line, all that kind of stuff. Like if he takes that away from him and says, hey, whoever my new center is, meaning you probably can't go get a rookie if this is the goal. You have to do a better job of helping the quarterback renumber. You take over that like Jeff Saturday did, and then let the quarterback move into his, kind of way he's moving. Okay, they've taken care of the protection. Now you figure out where your read starts based off the safeties and then play from there. I think if they do that, maybe that helps JJ McCarthy out. But if he has to count the line, do all the stuff, renumber, and then figure out if he wants to run or pass, I just don't know if he has it right now.
For those watching, quick update, Kirk Cousins kneeling out the New Orleans Saints, sending the Carolina Panthers to the playoffs.
Future Viking Kirk Cousins, veteran quarterback.
It is so possible.
Rossini and Rappaport reporting it today. The leaks are already coming out. Vikings will pursue a veteran. I actually don't think this is groundbreaking news being broken. We've known the Vikings would go get an established veteran.
I have thoughts, but I'm going to save them for a not post-game show.
That's fair. But I think the room will add, Carson Wentz came too late in the game, didn't have enough of a recent track record to be a credible, like long-term option, in which he ended up having to play a lot of games. They'll need a better solidification plan. Sam Howell was not enough. Yeah. That was not enough that they did this past off season. It's got to be a more legitimate solution to add depth, if not for starting the season, for backing up a guy who got hurt 4 different times this year.
Lots more to get into, including Harrison Smith and CJ Ham's potentially last game of their career. That's all coming up right after this. Quick reminder, today's episode brought to us by BetterHelp. The new year doesn't require a new you, maybe just a less burdened you, because we all carry things that weigh us down or hold us back. And guess what? Therapy can help identify what those things are. BetterHelp offers an unbiased perspective to better understand your relationships, your motivations, and emotions. They make it so easy to get matched up online with a qualified therapist that can help you work through what's really holding you back. And if you're not happy with your match, you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. BetterHelp makes it so easy to get matched up online with a qualified therapist. Sign up today and get 10% off at BetterHelp.com/lockedon. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/locked on. Today's episode also brought to us by Prize Picks. Prize Picks, without a doubt, most fun I have playing daily fantasy. You can win up to 25 times your money this NFL season. Why I love it. So easy to play. All you got to do, you select 2 or more players. You pick more or less on their projected stats. We're talking receptions, sacks, touchdowns, field goals, interceptions, you name it, they got it. Plus, they now offer Apple Pay, quick and easy deposits into your account all season long. Right now, go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use the code LockedOnNFL. You're getting $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's promo code LockedOnNFL for $50 in lineups when you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. All right, normally I'd get into the biggest turning points from this one, but I think in just kind of a weird, kind of sloppy game. Ron, I want to ask you this before you get out of here. I know we got 5-10 minutes left. Harrison Smith and CJ Ham maybe just played in their last games ever. Both Vikings legends, obviously. Harrison Smith, a possible Hall of Famer. As a former player, what was it like to see both guys have such impactful games, with Harrison Smith last week, CJ Ham today with the touchdown? And what does that do, I guess, for other players in the locker room when you see kind of your coaches really prop those leaders up, those captains up like that, and want them to have their kind of shining moment, so to speak?
I mean, I'd say for those two guys, it shows what you need to do off the field. Those are guys that never ended up in the paper, never ended up on a 2 a.m., rush home, 70, 75, 80 miles an hour, 100 miles an hour type of guys, not going to make jokes about any other players who ended up in those situations. But, you just think about all the situations that could have happened with those guys. And, you never got that. And I think that's the first reason why you keep guys like CJ Ham in the locker room who, fullbacks are a dying breed. They're a dinosaur in the NFL at times. But when you think about his impact in the locker room, when the players joked on social media about who's your emergency call contact, a lot of them said CJ Ham. Like that was the funniest. Is like they know if they're in trouble, CJ Ham is going to be the one person that they probably can count on to come get them out of trouble. He's the one person that they know is going to give them the advice they need to hear. For Harrison Smith on the other side, like I said, this is my 11th season doing Vikings Game Day Live, and it's been an absolute blast. I think my biggest memory of him talking to the players too is when my daughter was selling bracelets back in, during COVID and Minneapolis was having riots and other stuff. Harrison Smith, a lot of people just did Venmo or, checks, or they text me, hey, Ron, I'm gonna send your daughter some money. Can you make some bracelets for this charity or for this group of kids and whatever and blah, blah. Harrison Smith texted me like, hey, man, what's your address? And you never know what you're going to get. Maybe you think something in the mail, whatever. Like an hour and a half later, a guy pulls up in the Tesla, tinted out windows, you still don't know who it is. And Harrison Smith gets out and not only gets out and gets bracelets, but actually sits around, plays with the kids, talks to them about making bracelets, watches them make them, asks them how easy and hard it is, play catch with some of the kids in the neighborhood. I look back on that, my daughter got a signed jersey, Harrison Smith jersey. And, when you think about that, and I think he signed a helmet and some other stuff, but when you think about that, that's like a legacy of football that a lot of superstars would not do. And I know kids on that in my neighborhood. Now my daughter's 14, turning 15. All those kids are going to remember that. Like, oh, I remember Harrison Smith came to our neighborhood, just hung out with us for a couple hours. Like, no TV cameras, no, because of course people are like, oh, did ABC and NBC and everybody show up and Fox and CNN and ESPN? No, not that day. They did show up, but not that day. Like he didn't do it for the cameras. Like he did it just because he wanted to come hang out with the kids. And I got a chance to talk to his wife today. We were in the tunnel and we were talking about this, and she came out and actually watched Harrison Smith come out the tunnel for first time in his career. She said she's never watched it from the field. She's always been up with the kids somewhere, or she's always just been in the press box with her friends. So she actually made an effort to come down on the field, stay on the field, send the kids off with family, and watch her husband come out the tunnel. And you saw the teammates, Anthony Barr, I saw Andrew Sendejo and Xavier Rhodes, and all these guys came back just because of Harrison Smith. That's what a locker room guy looks like. Like when your teammates, in the 10s to 20s come back just to watch you play your last potential game. I think that's the key. That's how you left an impact on this team and this state and this city and those guys. Because, there's some guys that have left the organization and you don't see guys showing up in their jersey, guys wearing their jersey to the game. That's when you've left a mark on this team, not just on the field, but just, hey, it's a great guy. Because if he was a jerk, like guys wouldn't do that. They'd be like, man, whatever. This dude's a jerk, man. Like he doesn't talk to me. He steals my sandwiches for lunch. There's a lot of things, these guys don't do. And he's one of the guys that does it. Like he does everything possible. And you could see he didn't really want all the fanfare. Like when we were all standing there on the sideline and Anthony Barr and the guys, he kind of like was taking pictures, but it was Harrison Smith. His wife's like, one more, and he's just like, all right, whatever, fine. And he's like, man, I got to go. And Xavier Rhodes was like, no, you're going to be late. You're going to be late to the team huddle for this one. And they waited. The team waited for Harrison Smith to finish talking to his friends, which was just to show another leadership category of like, look, this guy's never high-sided us for his family and friends. He's always in the locker room. He's always in the huddle. But today was his day. So it was kind of cool to see that too, that the coaches didn't push him to hurry up and come over and whatever. It was just like, look, let him do his thing. He'll be over here when he's ready. And he took his time and got over there. But it was just cool to see, even, Brian Flores came off and gave me a hug, which was random, but he came over and we were chatting for a minute. And then of course everybody's like, what did he say? And I'm like, I'm not telling you guys what he said, but
you're going to tell us.
Sounds like a goodbye from Brian
like
Flores, getting emotional, hugging Ron.
Yeah,
no, wow. I think everybody just watching Harrison Smith, because Josh McCown came over there, Kwesi was over there, like, Keenan McCardell came over there, like they all walk up that way anyway, but they all kind of stood around, for a little bit. And, we were just talking football, but at the same time, it's like, man, this could be it for Harrison Smith. But at the end of the day, we all know September might roll around, that $5 to $7 million offer might roll around, and you're not doing nothing and the body feels good. Come back and play some football.
You got the itch. Yeah, you got the itch. Sam, obviously two completely different positions being played, a fullback in today's era, and then obviously a safety as well. But if this was the last game for both these guys, what are you going to remember about these final two games? I guess Harrison Smith last week, CJ Ham this week, and talk about the big shoes I guess you have to fill, especially with KOC and the fullback in his offense, if that's something that they decide to maybe transition out of, I guess.
Yeah. First note, I'm thinking actually, ironically, how being eliminated from playoff contention creates an even better moment for you because you have the curtain.
There's
call.
nothing else to focus on. Yeah.
There's nothing else to focus on, and you can go out. They can pull you from the game. While like Harrison Smith wouldn't be leaving the game with 4 minutes to go normally, but in a situation like this, you can have your moment. You get the recognition. And I'm also thinking it should have been Adam Thielen should have been with them. Adam Thielen should have been part of that. And if he has to walk off the field tonight, a loser against Baltimore, and has one catch for 7 yards, is that they don't care that Adam Thielen's retiring, so he's going to miss that moment. And I just think that's as Ron shows.
Pick is in.
Ron's got
pick is in.
the
Pick is in.
His NFL alma mater.
Actually, we care about tonight's game. Vikings fans should be rooting for Baltimore because I believe if they win and the Steelers lose, the Steelers would also end up at 9-8, and the Steelers would have the tiebreaker over Minnesota draft before them. It would actually knock the Vikings, who currently hold the 18th overall pick. It would knock them to the 17th overall pick.
Love that.
It changes everything.
And that
changes everything.
Yep. With all the other games wrapping out here, and the Colts are taking a loss, I think those are that's in the final moments. It looks like the Vikings are either 17th or 18th.
A couple additional thoughts on just the players. So Harrison Smith, a guy that stuck around through multiple regimes. He restructured his contract multiple times. There was never it was never difficult with Harrison Smith. Keeping him around was never difficult. It was always really just a joy to watch. So I'm going to miss seeing 22 in the secondary. I always thought that he had exceedingly good hands for a defensive back. He was a really good catcher of the football. Did it without elite athleticism, just a savvy player. And I love that he excelled into at the very end. You saw vintage Harrison Smith in that penultimate game last week. CJ Ham, speaking of Thielen, there's just Thielen vibes with the Ham story. It's a tryout player, Minnesota native, plays a decade in his home state. And at a position that's phasing out of the NFL that, like Luke, you said, we don't know what they have in store for the fullback position going forward. I would guess they will at least roster one in training camp next year, and they've proven that they actually play pretty well when they go heavy.
That depends on who is hired on the offensive staff, which is maybe a conversation we should have.
Yep.
I don't know who even works here next year.
All of the good feelings today might be out the window tomorrow when we get some tweets from Tom Pelissero, but I'll give the floor to Braun to talk about the two retirees.
Yeah, to me, it's still like Harrison Smith had a mostly quiet game here, so his real send-off was that Christmas game. That felt like the real swan song. That was really awesome. But I loved, the emotional moment of all of these Vikings players. These are the two longest tenured Vikings, right? These guys were around well before anybody else was. I mean, Harrison Smith was around when they still had the white side stripe in 2012. I mean, this has been a while, right? These guys were around. CJ Ham blocked for Adrian Peterson, if I recall. So these guys have been around a lot, and these are like the elder statesmen of the franchise, and the respect that they get from everybody else. So like every other Viking staff, for the most part, except for some very long tenured like equipment or whatever, but players, staff, everybody had their first day of work at the Vikings, and Harrison Smith and CJ Ham were already there and established. And like everybody had that experience. That the respect that comes with that, you could really feel in both of those moments. CJ Ham, blowing a kiss at the Jumbotron, and Harrison Smith getting his send off with a timeout where they literally say timeout to celebrate Harrison Smith, which nobody was mad at. I don't even think the Packers minded. Yeah, you can't say enough about the legacy of those two guys. And what I really love for CJ Ham in particular, and I don't think we've talked about it enough, that if this is his last season, he is going out on a 6th season. CJ Ham has had an awesome year. Ton of really cool blocks, couple of touchdowns, but every game it felt like I could have picked out 3 or 4 plays that were good runs with a lead blocker just absolutely deconstructing somebody. So I don't know. I feel like there's a world where CJ Ham could come back to the NFL next year and still play. I still think he's got juice. I don't think that about Harrison Smith, but I still think CJ Ham's got a little juice. I don't know if it would be as a Viking or like how any of that would work out. Obviously, that's part of a larger discussion, but there's quite a bit to love and quite a bit to remember.
It really felt very definite that CJ Ham was done with.
It sure did. Or was it he doesn't know?
Well, the wife wearing the custom sweatshirt with Ham, like the picture of Ham on it, that seemed.
The wife's reaction was almost more telling, I feel like, than anything.
Yeah,
else, Sam,
setting up, getting him the ball, like the congratulations for him off the field. All like this is a guy that is not. It's not as if he's so old that there's no reason why he'd come back unless he had made it clear that he wasn't. Mm-hmm. I know he's a free agent. I get that part, but I feel like because of what you said, Luke, if he wanted to come back, if he had interest in coming back, the Vikings would talk to him about it. They would negotiate something. So I feel like this was the end. I feel like this was the end for CJ Ham. Less certain about Harrison, actually.
Yeah, both obviously huge culture guys. Both not flashy by any means, but just so foundational for this team over the last decade. Both highly, highly respected in the locker room as well, as we touched on. My question is, and we got a comment that kind of points it out. Harrison Smith was traded. Harrison Phillips was traded early in the year. You lose Harrison Smith, let's say, CJ Ham. You lose Adam Thielen as well. Who is like the 2 or 3 new locker room leaders in this team, in this locker room next year, Ron? Brian O'Neill, I guess, first guy that comes to mind, but who's like 2, 3, and 4, I guess, at this point?
Yeah, I'd say, easily it's going to probably go to like special teams. You still got DePaula, most likely is back. So you think about special teams guys. I'd say, Brian O'Neill. If Fries is back, you got to go with, your other older offensive guard that maybe could take a new kind of perspective on it. I don't know if Christian Darrisaw is a verbal leader like that. Justin Jefferson, I don't feel like is as well. I think Justin Jefferson is more on the field superstar. I'm not going to say he's like Randy Moss. Randy Moss was never considered a leader, but Chris Carter was. It's just something in you that, you can be a great player, but you don't have to be like a leader. And that's where I look at like Brian O'Neill. But you're right. There's Blake Cashman, potentially. I'd say, he's going to step up in that role. He is a Minnesota guy, even though he hasn't been here this long. He still has Minnesota blood. So I would go there. I would say Blake Cashman, Brian O'Neill are kind of my front runners for that. But, before I get out of here, that's what I was going to say. Like, this team is going to change so much over the offseason. That's what everybody has to figure out. Like, what is this team going to look like? Who's coming back? I think TJ Hawkinson potentially is gone with that money and that output. It just wasn't there. I feel like benching him or inactive was to keep him healthy. Because you don't want him to be inactive. You don't want him to be active and get hurt in the last games if you know you're probably going to want to move on from him. You want to get him to the offseason healthy, and I think that's kind of the move down the stretch was let's get this guy healthy. Because dollar-wise, maybe it doesn't work. This offense has way too many options, and if tight end doesn't need to be one of them, you got Jordan Addison. I think that's why Jalen Naylor probably comes back and you move on from Hawkinson. But, it's been a great season. Definitely enjoyed it with you guys. But, this offseason is going to be wild. It's going to be such a shift, whether it's Brian Flores or wherever. I think, just like watching the NIL with college football right now, this is what the offseason is going to look like for the NFL with the Vikings. It's going to be, pandemonium over the next, couple of months.
Gophers legend, NFL vet. Appreciate all you do for us, Ron. Follow him on X at 3 Ron Johnson. Later, Ron.
Thanks, Ron.
Last one real quick. Here's just a fun one from the comments. Better Rick Spielman draft pick, Harrison Smith or Justin Jefferson? And whichever one you don't
Garrett
pick,
Bradbury.
That means you hate that other guy.
Oh. It's Garrett Bradbury. That's the best Spielman pick, clearly. Currently, running the offense for the favorite MVP. Shouldn't have let him walk.
Jefferson is the better pick. Jefferson's the better player. at his position and picked, and not as it's. I know Harrison Smith was picked 29. Like, it's better to find a good Hall of Famer at 29, but Jefferson was what, 23? So
22.
I think
22,
yeah, can
I
we
think.
take
Yeah.
a minute
I
to
think-
acknowledge that? Because I know a lot of people basically, as soon as the Vikings were eliminated or even got close to being eliminated, wanted them to start losing for draft picks, and they're going to pick like 17th or 18th because they refused to do that. But the best picks in this team's history, just by happenstance, came in the playoff picks.
Oh, Percy
in the
Harvin.
20s.
Yeah, late
Yeah,
teens.
that- I
Percy
mean,
Harvin.
Good teams stay good because they pick good players, not because they have better opportunities.
Look at the
to pick.
Steelers. Steelers never have a top 10 pick,
Yeah.
and every year they just find guys.
We do
every
this
year
a
in those
lot
late teens,
in the
early 20s,
draft.
for sure.
Where we feel like if you're not in the top 10, you're not going to get anybody consequential. And that just isn't true. I think the perception of what a draft pick is worth and what a draft pick actually ends up providing
Landing
to a
spot
team
has a lot to do with that, too,
completely
yeah.
incongruous.
Look at Dallas.
so don't
like
worry about
Dallas
it. How
Turner
about
was
win
the
5
best
games
edge
and-
on the board, and where was he picked? You know, like you can at 18 or 17, you might have the best player at a given position that you.
How
get
about pick
pretty-
18,
pretty
Dallas
easily.
Turner, by the way? Absolutely popping off
Balled
today.
out. Balled out. What a great finish to this season. Not just today, obviously, not just week 18, but a lot of momentum building there for sure for Dallas Turner. I want to ask you guys about Justin Jefferson and his record that he kept going today as well. And then I guess just also a couple buy low, stock high, stock low situations. Guys, maybe that you're just a little surprised about. Ty Chandler being one of them for me, but plenty more. We'll get into all that right after this. Quick reminder, today's episode also brought to us by Drip Drop. Kicking off the year feeling good is the goal, right? And honestly, hydration is one of the easiest wins we can do for ourselves. I know when I stay on top of it, my energy, focus, and mood, they all level up. But let's be real, plain water doesn't always cut it, especially when you're grinding through those long days, maybe hitting the gym, just trying to stay consistent with some of your health goals. That's where Drip Drop comes in. Proven fast hydration that helps your body and your mind work better. You get clearer focus, better energy, elevated mood, and that fresh skin glow. Drip Drop science-backed formula is trusted by firefighters, medical professionals, and over 90% of the top college and pro teams because it rehydrates you faster and more effectively than just water alone. Right now, Drip Drop is offering you 20% off your first order. Go to dripdrop.com and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL. That's dripdrop.com. Promo code LOCKEDONNFL for 20% off. Stock up right now at dripdrop.com and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL. All right, stock up, stock down. Before we get to Justin Jefferson and him eclipsing the 1,000-yard mark for the 6th season in a row, entering some elite status with Mike Evans and Randy Moss. But stock up, stock down. I was surprised Xavier Scott did not get a little bit more run. He got some touches for sure, but kind of felt like it was the Ty Chandler show backing up Jordan Mason. And for me, what that kind of signified for me is that they feel pretty good about Xavier Scott being that running back 3 potentially next year. What happens with Aaron Jones, we'll figure all that
he's
out
under
in the
contract.
offseason. But yeah, but I'm saying it felt like they were giving Ty Chandler kind of an audition and some stuff to put on film for the rest of the league. Does that make sense, Luke?
Yeah, for sure. He's the guy that is a pending free agent, right? So he's the guy they have to make a decision on in the next month. They don't have to do anything with Xavier Scott. And it's the same with everybody who's under contract who you maybe don't think should be on the team next year. Say Max Brosmer, right? But there's 2 years of team control on that deal. You wouldn't cut it just to cut it, bring it into camp and let somebody beat him for the job. That's usually how we're going to handle that stuff. And so I would say the same for Xavier Scott or any of the undrafted free agents that made the team this year. I remember there were like 6 or 7 this year that made the team. And all of those guys now are on 3-year deals. So you don't have to touch them. You don't have to call them. You don't have to say a gosh darn word to those guys until OTAs in May. But with Ty Chandler or people who are either potential cap casualties or people who are pending free agents, you have to decide if you want to bring them back. Those are the guys that you're going to want to get a look at.
Yeah. Was there anybody
said the
else
number.
in that kind of situation, I guess, that just kind of stuck out for you, Sam?
Yeah. Eric Wilson is a pending
Yeah.
free agent, and he ended the year once again, spectacular, blowing up run plays, getting after the passer. Well, that is, we knock Kwesi for the drafting stuff. But every year, they seem to have someone like this that shows up and unexpectedly is great. Career year for Eric Wilson. Props to him. We've talked about some potential salary marks, maybe a 2-year, $12 million type deal that he's earned. Would love to see him back. Would absolutely love to see him back as a niche in a Flores defense. Flores being back is a different story. Jalen Naylor, his final game maybe in purple. Good game for Naylor. I think you look at his body of work, and it's probably a little similar to the Wilson. More expensive, but can you afford luxuries in an offseason where you have to shed cap, also sign a high-end backup quarterback, figure out the center spot, a couple other areas you got to bolster. Secondary is still going to be a need. Do you have the money to keep guys like that around? I don't know the answer. So between Wilson and Naylor, two guys I'd like to see back. Don't know if they will be.
Another stock up in the comments. Ben Sims obviously getting a little bit more run as tight end 2.
How about the throw to Ben
Hawkinson?
Sims?
Yeah, great. Great little
that was
there.
one of the best throws of the year.
Great little tinto there.
With Ben Sims, it's very funny, especially watching the Packers who are down to the depths of their tight end just off of injury, but also are trying to like sit starters and stuff, and watching their tight ends 3, 4, and 5 struggle a lot, while Ben Sims was probably the best tight end on the field today. Well, I guess maybe Josh Oliver. I think Ben Sims can genuinely play. I think that guy has a future in this league for a long time if he wants.
Can we just acknowledge Ron's hot take? He's been on this for a couple weeks. He doesn't love Hawkinson's future.
Who would you rather keep? Hawkinson for some more money or Jalen Naylor for a little bit cheaper? Who would you rather keep next year?
I don't think it's in the cards with Naylor. I don't think Naylor even picks up the phone.
Who would you rather keep, though? You're running the show. You're the GM. You got the keys.
Hawkinson,
save a little bit of money.
We've seen this. We've seen this tight end group operate without him. It's very underwhelming.
Yeah,
I think that you cannot look at his production or anyone's production for that matter this year and judge it completely based on that player. It's a quarterback. Receiving yards is in very many ways a quarterback production side effect. So
one route from week 2 went viral, and I think people just kind of that was it. That's the thing that people are judging TJ Hawkinson on, is the one viral route that they saw. I've been standing up for him for 3 years because what he does for this offense is vital. And I don't even want to call it unseen. I want to say that people aren't looking for it. There is so much of the really fun Kevin O'Connell play designs that we have all come to love that TJ Hawkinson has a load-bearing role in, whether it is a block, whether it is a deep route that clears out the right kind of thing, that has to be run from inline, so it has to be a tight end that does it, because you need to bring a bigger player onto the defense for it to work. Without TJ Hawkinson, so much stuff becomes impossible. And I like Josh Oliver a lot. I just want that duo to be back. If you want to cut TJ Hawkinson and save the money, I need to hear your tight end plan, because it can't just be roll with Josh Oliver. That's
Hawkinson
not good enough on its own.
Correct. And we saw it to start last year, wasn't good. And also TJ Hawkinson has virtually no void money. He's got like 1.7 million in void. You can add a ton of void money and save a lot on next year's cap. So I'm not worried about the number on that. You can kick it down the road, have him back in a little better quarterback environment. I still want him on the team.
Yeah, there's so many contracts that are like that on this. You can actually get under for 2026 just by restructuring TJ Hawkinson, Justin Jefferson, Christian Darrisaw. No other move, no cut. You can completely keep the whole roster, and you would actually be back in the black. You wouldn't have a lot of money to work with, but like that's how close you are. And it's clear that the Vikings planned that. Like all of the contracts are made to be restructured right now, so we'll probably see a ton of that. But what I think when you get these cap casualties in like really vital roles, because I think what people are feeling is Hawkinson's paid a lot and he's not playing well enough, cut him. Like that's the logic. And not only do I think that's wrong, but I also think like you're not going to save resources on that without getting worse, without getting a lot worse at the position. Because to replace what Hawkinson does, to get a guy in that role, you're going to have to spend a first-round pick. So are you spending a first-round pick to save like $15 million? That feels like a horrible use of resources.
Another position group, a lot of question marks going into this offseason. Cornerback room, obviously, and just go ahead and combine that with the safety group as well. Burrito Bill, do the Vikes bring back Fabian Moreau into training camp or sign him later? Again, obviously getting a little ahead of ourselves. We're going to talk about all this stuff all offseason for weeks and months. But this guy got a lot of run these last 4 or 5 games for sure. And clearly they got Murphy and Isaiah Rodgers. That's your 1-2, but they're going to need some other bodies back there. It's going to just be interesting whether it's Moreau or not, somebody else. There's going to be a lot of shuffling, it feels like, in that secondary room. Guys like Theo Jackson, does he stick around again? Obviously, Metellus probably be the safety 1 back there if Harrison Smith does retire. So just, a lot of, like Ron said, his final kind of parting words. This offseason is going to be fun. It's going to be wild for sure. And I would expect Kwesi and not just Kwesi, but KOC and everybody involved to be involved in a lot of these personnel moves, because they're going to have to shuffle some things around this year for sure.
I think you've got a good base, or at least something to build on with Ward and Jackson and Metellus. I think that they can all play a role.
Mm-hmm.
And with those,
I want one
those
like
3
bona fide stud in there, and then those guys are all role players. That feels okay.
I would feel really good if they spent a first-round pick on a corner. You need developmental pieces there. You just can't keep doing this with the Fabian Moreaus. I'm sorry. They need to add a body there, certainly, and I'd feel really good if they got another safety in. And you can find every year, you get to the 3rd wave of free agency and you look at the list, and there's still like bona fide starting safeties out there that have played a lot of snaps in the NFL and can do the job in a Flores defense where a lot of the onus is taken off the pass defense. I think they can fix this in the secondary. They can fill the holes, but you need to have some youth. And for whatever reason, this is I choose to call this a knock on Brian Flores. He's not been able to develop young players at all. It's been really frustrating to see, actually. So if he's back, that's one area where they got to improve at.
I can't argue with that. What is this, though? Is this year 3 with Flores? How am I blanking on this?
This was the 3rd season of Flores.
Year 3. Yeah. Now, again, he doesn't draft the guys, though. I'm sure he's chirping in everybody's ear, but he doesn't draft them. So I'm just thinking about...
But he does develop them, and that is part of it. Like, the draft is a much more luck-based thing than anyone wants to admit, especially when their GM is doing well. But it's very much like a lot of the draft picks that haven't worked out have been these like upside propositions. Like, how often do we go into the draft saying, hey, that guy, he's got all these flaws, but he's toolsy, he's got upside, and he turns into a first-round pick because you assume that your guys can develop them. And then if that doesn't happen, it's weird that we look at it as, well, then they misevaluated the guy. Like, no, they knew exactly what they were buying, and then they screwed it up. I would say that you would say that about like Lewis Seen.
He's had Seen in the building.
Seen
He's
in
had
Booth.
Or Andrew Booth in the building.
That guy was
Blackman in the building.
Nashawn
Wright in the building. Caleb Evans. Forget about him.
Makai
all
Blackman,
guys
Jay Ward, Kyrie
didn't
Jackson,
even see through their contract, and maybe that speaks to an organizational belief that if our coaches deem them to be unsuitable after 2 years, we're just going to try to get some value back. Maybe that's like a Kwesi thing, but it's frustrating when you have no depth and you gave away young cornerbacks with upside. That's frustrating.
It's insanely frustrating, and I would even say that there's kind of a rot in the attitude toward these young players that I don't know how public it's been discussed, but I've definitely heard about it. Giving up on guys. Just kind of this vibe that like if a young player isn't, by year 2, if a young player isn't kind of taking that next step, that they're just kind of done with them. And I even kind of felt a little bit of that with Dallas Turner, and then he sort of turned it around. But in this year, I mean, there were games where he just wouldn't play. And it's like, okay, so you're just not interested in developing this guy at all. So I don't know if they even prioritize it. And sure, if you have a Flores defense, it's complicated. You want veteran minds. You're asking guys to do such specific niche things that like you don't have to get these expensive do-it-all players. You can kind of hack it with role player. If you want to do that, then do that. That might not be the case anymore. And here's the nightmare scenario is Flores gets hired away, and now they've got all these pieces built for a defense that only one guy knew how to run. So are we going to keep doing this veteran thing, or do we have to now go into a full-scale defensive rebuild and hope that the offensive rebuild takes?
And will Brian Flores even be here next year?
And will if he goes somewhere, is he going to take his heir apparent? Like I think a lot of us assume that a Durante Jones might backfill, but what if Durante Jones is the defensive coordinator for Flores, right? Like he could take staffers that could have been that guy and bring him to his new location. I still think that there's not
Mike Pettin.
I don't think he's
defensive coordinator.
I don't think he's going to get a job. I'm on record as saying that.
Oh, really?
Adam Archuleta seemed to feel like color guy today in the booth.
Well, CBS didn't even bother talking about the legal case that is the gigantic albatross in the room. So there's that.
Right. Plenty more coming up. One more segment. What we'll be talking about tomorrow, plus what we loved, what we hated from today's game. That's all coming up right after this. Quick reminder, today's episode also brought to us by Game Time. You know, the sports season, we're kind of at its peak. NFL, NBA, NHL, kind of all in crunch time right now. With tailgate rivalries and the energy in the stands, there's really nothing like it. But let's be real, actually getting tickets, that can feel like more of a battle than the game itself. You got the endless queues, hidden fees, price jumping when you get to checkout. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. By far the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. Faster, cheaper, way less stressful than any other way I've ever bought tickets before. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. All right, I'll give you guys two options here. Take one and run with it. Biggest second guess from today's game as you kind of watch this one play out, or what you loved, what you hated. I love that finally somebody on the broadcast gave Will Reichard some real love, some real flowers today. One of the best seasons a Viking kicker has ever had. Will Reichard, props to him.
Yeah, that was cool. What an unbelievable year for Will Reichard. Perfect inside of 50 yards. Hit wires on his missed kicks. If not for the wires, we would have had a perfect season.
Perfect for PAT as well.
I will say in that they were like, this is the best season in franchise history. We were just forgetting Gary Anderson. Come on now.
Yeah, we don't do that. Yeah.
If you wait for longer kicks, it might be. How many? Let's guess. How many 50+ yard kicks?
You got to mention the 98 year. You can't just say look at this one. Best, like you got to mention that there is a very specific year for competition for this. Yep, and then we can have that debate and maybe it's
Blair Walsh rookie year too. What was he? Perfect from 50+?
I think
he made a bunch of 50-yarders, but I think he also missed extra points.
So Gary Anderson had 2 kicks of 50+ yards that year, and how many did Will Reichard have this year? Double digits. So there's
who was the kid from Jacksonville today, by the way, that nailed that 67-yarder? Yeah, that was pretty fun.
67. Is that a record? What's the record at now? Moving target.
He's second place now. Not sure what the record is, but he's in second place now. It's 67.
I can't remember. See, it's going up every year. I wanted to give flowers to Justin Jefferson for getting the 1,000-yard mark. They got it within a quarter and a half. Didn't take long. And like Ron said in the open, pretty simple stuff. You had a bubble screen. You had a pop pass. You had kind of a delayed leak out, into the flat where he caught it and ran. Like these are pretty simple concepts, and he is a bona fide baller with the ball in his hands, and he can actually get yak yards. So I think that's a model for what you can use going forward. And I'm glad that he didn't just nudge over it. He basically doubled what he needed today. Got over 100 yards for the day. Good way to go out for Jefferson.
Being corrected in the chat real quick, Two-Toed Sloth and some others. Little has both records, 68 indoor, 67 outdoor. So that dude has been money from deep.
I think I both loved and hated the McCarthy scramble taunting sequence. I know you want him to protect himself and all that, but I do think there's a grit and an energy to just knocking over a corner, and like that's not going to be fun. I know Ron made a decent point about him, like maybe he was letting up or whatever, but you get into the film room and Keyshawn Nixon is going to get destroyed by his teammates for that. I mean, you can't take a shoulder from 9. All right. You can't do that. But then losing his cool, turning around, getting a very flagrant taunting penalty, and then letting it ruin the next 2 drives is the kind of thing you just cannot have ever happen again. I love being aggressive, right? The stiff arm, all that stuff. Great. Be aggressive. If you feel like he is not bringing his all, lower your shoulder, do your thing. Would love to see you get out of bounds anyways. Wouldn't argue with that either. But what we need to see maybe more than anything from JJ McCarthy is emotional fortitude. And we mentally, he has fallen apart too many times this year. And it is why, I just looked this up, he is 33rd out of 34 quarterbacks by year's end in EPA per dropback because he just edged out Cam Ward. I said that earlier in the show. 33rd out of 34. And the worst sequences that led to that were times where he lost his mind, where he lost his cool. It wasn't mechanics. It wasn't, I wouldn't even say much of that was because like the protection failed him or whatever. It was because he lost his mind, and he can't do that anymore. You need to learn how to keep your cool if you're going to be an NFL franchise quarterback.
Quite the good point there, Bron. Quite the contrast coming from Kirk Cousins, who a lot of people saw on the sidelines in frustrating moments, and like, dude, show a little passion, man. Get angry, right? Do the Tom Brady, throw the tablet, man. And now we got almost a little overcompensation. Like, cool it down just a little bit. Love that you're here.
Perfect
Love
balance
that you're
in between with Sam Darnold, who
balance,
keeps his cool, but you could tell that he was stoked when he would throw a 98-yard touchdown to Justin Jefferson.
As he should have been. Sam, I don't think we touched on this, and maybe we'll touch on it tomorrow, but just real quick, turning point of the actual season now that it's wrapped up. Mm-hmm. I was trying to think about that before Thursday's show, and I was like, maybe the Baltimore game, the second half of the Baltimore game, they were still up 10-6 in that game, and they were, I want to say 500. They were coming off the Detroit Lions win in Detroit. They're 500 now, 4-4. Maybe we get hot and go on a run. But the more I thought about it, I was like, I don't know if there was one like obvious turning point. It didn't feel like one moment derailed this season. It kind of bled out in a bunch of different pieces. JJ McCarthy's injury obviously lost a lot of rhythm and momentum. The offensive line having, how many combinations did we end up with? Over 20.
23, they said. I didn't even realize it was
by far
that
the
bad.
most in the NFL. And then just the early season stuff. Addison suspension for 3 games. Van Ginkel, who's so important to this defense, missed a bunch of time early on. Josh Metellus missed a bunch of time early on. So didn't really feel like there was one derailing moment. Kind of felt like this whole thing, again, kind of just bled out from the get-go.
Yeah.
What a day for Van Ginkel, by the way.
Balling, dude. Balling.
There's a lot to like in that front seven coming back next year. I think that there's two turning points for me. Kind of big picture. The turning point was McCarthy spraining the ankle in week 2 because it set back his development to such a degree and created so much discourse about his mechanics, his ability to practice. And that if he had been able to work through this earlier in the season, and think about some of those early season opponents too. I would have liked to see him in a game against Jake Browning, where there probably would have been some wiggle room, taking on the Browns, taking on the Steelers. I think those would have been good opponents to work through some things before the bye. Didn't get the chance to do that. And then from a season perspective, it's the end of the Chicago game. If you stop that kickoff, prevent the Bears from winning at the buzzer, you're 5-5. And I'm a believer in the butterfly effect. That could change the way the Green Bay game plays out, could change the way the Seattle game plays out. It changes your mentality. There's more at stake. You're more motivated because you know that you're more of a contender. I think that's the single moment that you look to. And as we pointed out, I don't know what the Bears are doing right now, but if you win that Bears game and the season plays out the same way, well, the Vikings would be on their, we would be biting our fingernails, cheering for the Lions to beat the Bears so the Vikings could win the NFC North. That's how close it actually ended up being.
And then go play Max Brosmer in the first week of the playoffs because JJ McCarthy got hurt.
Because JJ
Can
McCarthy's
you imagine?
hurt, right? Yeah, for an unceremonious wild card exit. I'm not going to grieve it too much. I think I come at it from a different angle. They have 5 games where the offense entirely no-showed. The 2 Max Brosmer games where the offense was so hideous and putrid, I don't ever want to talk about it again. The Atlanta debacle, the Thursday night mess in LA, and then in Lambeau. 5 different games where the offense completely no-showed, and with all 3 quarterbacks. I don't really feel like you have a right to be like, oh, but that one half a game, oh, that one kickoff. When you just straight up didn't get off the bus for a third of the season. Do that 4 times instead of 5. And then, then we're having this conversation. But I think offensively, the defense did something amazing, and Brian Flores could get a head coach job out of it and would be justified. But offensively, it is still a fireable performance. And the last time the Vikings cleared out a side of the ball's staff was a 13-4 playoff season when they cleared out Donatel. So I don't think the season or finishing on a 5-game win streak saves these guys. Your unit sucked a lot for a lot of the season. And we went into this season with, young quarterback, and sure, you're going to have your growing pains with that. But with one of the most expensive receiver cores, one of the most expensive O-lines, all bona fide players, all proven veterans, Pro Bowlers up and down the thing, this shouldn't have happened. This was the worst offense in the league. That shouldn't happen.
A lot of good
Somebody's
points
got to go
there. Yeah, a lot of good points there. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of big decisions that are going to have to be made this offseason for sure, and not just the players, as Luke you're pointing out, but the coaching staff as well. What's going to be the topic tomorrow? Once the things settle a little bit, emotions always a little high after these games, but biggest talking point after what we just watched unfold, obviously, C.J. Ham and Harrison Smith, possible last games. We touched on that. Brian Flores and the coaching staff, the Black Monday thing in the NFL. Is there going to be any movers or shakers there? But anything else maybe we haven't touched on that, should be a talking point tomorrow morning?
Yeah.
Black Monday, right?
I think we're watching the breaking news wire. I think there's probably an order of events. I think first things first, you clean out what you need to clean out. So moves will get made probably before Kevin O'Connell's, or maybe they hold it till after. I don't know if that. And in the old days, they would make these moves and let the coach address it. Maybe nowadays they have the coach talk and then make the moves to
talk about the season in a retrospective and then make the moves and kind of talk about that and then wait for the combine so everyone's got a bunch of other questions.
Yeah, avoid the tough questions.
The Vikings do love dodging the media. That's very true.
Then we'll obviously be on the watch for retirement announcements. I think that probably maybe Hams comes sooner. Smith might be until after the playoffs. I don't know if we'll hear about that right away. But, there's an order to these things, and we'll start putting the pieces together. The Flores hiring conversations, we'll probably start hearing talks of his interviews, if there are any, this week with the teams that are eliminated. So we'll start getting more information. We'll see what the market is like. If he's getting interviewed by every single place, that tells you that there's not that would indicate to me that maybe he's willing to drop the lawsuit. Maybe there's something in the air that tells teams that it's safe to proceed with Brian Flores, and that's going to be a big one this week.
I will say with Harrison Smith, it's because of void year crap they did with his contract. It makes more sense for the Vikings, if he does retire, to wait until after June 1st to process it, which he can announce it tomorrow and they're still that's fine. They can do that. But it does kind of give you a way to tell Harrison Smith, hey, dude, think about it, right? You got all the way. We're not even going to process it till June. So you have all of that time to think about it, and you're not affecting anything on our end. Go take your time. I could see Harrison Smith taking a lot of time going out into the wood gym in rural Tennessee and lift on it a little bit.
Yeah. Go bust out the golf clubs, head to Cancun for a little bit. We got nothing but time, my man, for sure. Gonna be interesting for sure. Quick gambling winner loser update. Do we want to get into that in these closing couple minutes here?
I think we should get into that tomorrow. I think that would be much more fun.
It was dramatic.
It was dramatic.
There was drama.
Yes,
It was down to the final moments.
Good tease for tomorrow. Any parting thoughts? Anybody want to unload the clip, so to speak? Parting thoughts on the Vikings 2025 campaign. Props, by the way, to all the over 8.5 win bettors out there as well.
A sweat, indeed, for you guys.
Indeed, like no other.
Did Macho Meach have a ticket? If Macho Meach is still watching, chime in. I think you tweeted maybe that you had a ticket. Want to thank the fans for sticking with us here on this show, on the weekday show. We have a ton of fun. Seriously, you guys are the best. The commenters are the best. And it is so much more fun to cover a team that wins meaningless games than loses for draft position. I think Braun would agree with me on that. Like the last 5 games injected a little something into this season. And it's even, you can stay as critical as you want to be, but when you get to talk about winning football and 5-game winning streaks, that's cool. So I'm glad the Vikings did what they did down the stretch, and I don't give them a lot of credit for today's win, the Giants win, but hey, they won some cool games. They made this interesting, and they finished 9-8 on the year. They peaked too late. Some teams peak too early. Some teams peak too late. The Vikings didn't quite nail the timing this year.
Well said there. It's been a pleasure, boys. As always, another great season in the books.
Real quick, Luke, can I
Yeah.
throw something in? At the Locked On Network, there is no offseason. Viking Squad Show remains twice a week. Locked On Vikings remains 5 days a week. So don't go anywhere. There is so much to talk about, and we're saving some of those things for the coming weeks. But during the playoffs, during everything, during February, the middle of July, we will be here. Come on down.
Yeah, well said there. And, don't worry, we'll get your instant reaction fix as well. Draft weekend right around the corner. And preseason will be right around the corner as well before you know it. Vikings take down the Packers today. 16-3. They end the season on this 5-game win streak. End the season 9-8 on the year. Huge shout out to all you guys, all the everydayers out there that always make us your first listen. And again, all you guys coming in the chat with us from game to game. Check out Ron every Tuesday on the Ron Johnson Show. Luke Braun. Always killing over on the Locked On Vikings each and every day. We will be back tomorrow morning with our guy, Arif Hassan. Another episode breaking it all down. Sam Ekstrom right here hosting. Until then, thanks for watching. We'll talk to you next time.